are going to make some shredded beef tacos with cilantro lime rice, some corn salsa, pico de gallo, guacamole, a salad, and that's it. So let's start by getting our stuff ready for our shredded beef, which we have in our Instapot. We have it cooking, so it should be nice and tender, but I always like to saute it up a little bit. And we're going to saute it with some onions and some peppers just to add a little extra flavor to it. So we're going to slice up just about a half of an onion. We don't need a full onion for this on there, so we can save the other half for a rainy day. And we'll peel off this whole little outer bit. We can get that kind of caramelizing up, bring out its sweetness. And then we'll also slice up some peppers to throw in there as well. That way we'll have some veggies with our shredded beef, but nice and seasoned and delicious sauteed veggies. Let's get a little bit of olive oil in here. Just a little splash. And we'll drop our onions in. And I did nice skinny slices, that way they'll kind of flow with the shredded beef. Let me just give my hands a little splash. And now while that is cooking and waiting, we can work on we can start prepping some of our ingredients for our salsa. So for our corn salsa, I have frozen fire roasted corn that has been de-thawed. So that's the base of it. We can start cutting up our tomatoes for our pico de gallo. So I'm just going to take off the little tip at the very beginning, and then we'll dice these up. And then I've got 3 avocados to make some guacamole. I know, so I had this chuck roast today, and I was deciding all day, do I want to make a roast like with it, or shredded beef tacos? And Evie chimed up and she was like, beef tacos, I want beef tacos. So beef tacos it is, because she's not a big fan of roast, but she does love tacos and guacamole and salsa. So she's happy with this. Okay, so I've kind of sliced them, and now we'll dice them up for this. And this will be just some nice fresh pico de gallo, which is kind of just a really mild salsa. Now, if you wanted to make it a little bit more spicy, you could chop up a jalapeno and add it in there, or you could drizzle a little bit of like Tabasco sauce over it. But I like mine just the way it is. Here. Get those. Let's get our first round in here. And then we'll dice up our next part. Now, if you find that your knife is snagging on the tomato, like the skin especially, it means you just need to sharpen up your knife. And if your knife came with a honing steel, which a lot of knife sets do, just run it along the blade, along the steel a couple of times, about a minute, and it should sharpen up just fine, and then it'll be good as new. And it really does work. I've had my knife for over 16 years, and I sharpen it fairly regularly, probably once a month or so. And it takes me just a minute or two. And it's really easy, but it keeps it nice and sharp for cutting, because nothing is worse than a dull knife. That is when you're going to have an accident and slip and cut yourself. Okay, so we've got our tomatoes diced up here. Let's go and check on our onions. Let me grab some tongs out. We're going to turn our heat down now that it's nice and warm to a nice 5, so right in the middle. And I've tossed them around completely. Break them up. Perfect. Okay. And let's get on with our peppers. So some of these peppers are going to be for our salsa, some is going to go in for our salad, and some is going to go in for our meat as well. So we'll just grab some, and we'll start with our meat here first. So I'm just going to we'll just do 3 because that should be about equal to 1 bell pepper. Just scrape out any of the seeds, and then I'm just going to do long, skinny slices, just like with our onion. And I like to cut my peppers from the inside because that inside has a bit more texture than the smooth skin on the outside, which means you'll get a better grip on your knife and a better cut. Here. So we can have our nice and pieces, and I'll throw these in with our onions to start kind of cooking up. And then we'll mince up some garlic as well to throw in with our peppers and onions over there before we add in our shredded beef. Well, we can get these sauteing up, so kind of like a fajita veggie with the shredded beef. Give them a nice little toss. This adds an extra level of flavor. Yeah. Okay, we'll let those saute here for a minute. And while we're doing that, let's get some for our pico de gallo and our salad. So I'm going to just dice off. For our pico de gallo, again, you want nice kind of smaller dices, similar to a little bit smaller than your tomato pieces. You don't want super huge pieces of peppers. Otherwise, the texture is just a little big. So I'll make a couple slices and then we'll chop them the other way. Yeah. And with these, they're sweet peppers, so you don't have to worry about getting the seeds out. If you're using a spicy pepper, you want to make sure you really remove the seeds because the seeds can be very, very spicy. Here we go. So we've got some in. We'll get a couple more in there for our pico. We'll get some yellow in there, add a bit more color since we have those tomatoes. And there we go. Again, I'm still going through. I told you I bought so many peppers this last week and a half, and I'm not even sure why. I just didn't realize I had already a bunch of peppers. So we're going through it. I still have a bag and a half, a big bag and a half of sweet peppers in my refrigerator. So we're still not even near being done with it. And I've used a lot of peppers in the last couple of meals. There we go. Okay, let's get there. Let's give our veggies a quick toss here. And then we're going to get our garlic minced up. And so we can throw some of that in here. And that way we can get our shredded beef in here and get it seasoned up. So we had our shredded beef, which is a chuck roast, in our Instapot cooking for the last couple hours on the high pressure cooking setting. And when I put it in there, I seasoned it with a little bit of liquid smoke, some vegetable bouillon, a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, ancho chili powder, paprika, a little Mexican fiesta seasoning, tomato paste, and some garlic salt. And we'll let it kind of simmer in those spices. Oh, and oregano during that high pressure cooking. So it's cooking in its own lovely juices, but we'll add a little bit more to just have just a slightly more intense flavor. But we're going to add this saute or this garlic in as well, which will add a nice fresh flavor to it as well. So we're going to mince this up, and this will go into our pan to saute and really bring out some flavor. Here. So just getting nice and fine. Okay. Got my hands covered in garlic. Give this a nice little stir. Coat it up. We want it to saute for about a minute or so. Really let it kind of caramelize and bring out that natural flavor before we start adding in the meat and the juices of it.
Yeah, quick, are you having an early dinner tonight?
We are having an early dinner. My parents are coming over. They typically come over for Sunday dinner. And like I said, they're more the early birds. So we try to meet in the middle for us so that they don't have to eat as late and we eat a little bit earlier for us, which works well because on Sunday we typically do like a brunchy type thing instead of a lunch. Okay, let's get our red onion cut up for both our corn salsa and our pico de gallo. I'm going to just, a little bit of red onion goes a long way. So I always just like to take off, the part from the day before or whenever I used it last. That way you have just your fresh part left. And then we'll cut off our chunk that we need. Because red onions they're not your cooking. They're your fresh, your dips, your salads, your the ones that jazz up your burger and stuff like that. They're meant to be cold and in there. So I don't really use them unless I'm making a dip or a salad. Just get them nice and minced up for it. So this I think will be good for our corn salsa. So we've got our diced up red onions for our corn salsa, and then I'm going to take another chunk here for our pico de gallo. And add that in there. Now you could always use a white onion as well or some green onions. Yellow onions just aren't the right flavor. They're a bit too astringent for this. Red onions are nice because they're not as strong and again, a little bit sweeter. Let's go. Got our red onions for our salsas here. Let's check on our garlic, toasting up nicely over here. We're ready to add in our meat here. Smells wonderful. So again, you can see the steam coming up from this. It's stewing in it's like vegetable broth. It's about a 3-pound roast of our meat, and it's going to be nice and tender. And we're going to bring it in here. I'm going to give it a good swirl around in those juices. And then it should shred apart once we get it into our pan. There we go. And you could always just serve it straight from the Instapot too. But I like to add a little bit more seasoning, and we'll ladle some of these juices in here as well. But just to season it up a bit more. Bring that all in here. Okay. So that is about a 3-pound chuck roast that we had in our Instapot on the high pressure cooker setting for about 2.5 hours. We cooked it in about 2 cups of vegetable bouillon with about 2 spoonfuls of tomato paste, some ancho chili powder, paprika, some Mexican fiesta seasoning, garlic salt, liquid smoke, a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, and some oregano. So we're going to mix this around, just kind of coating it up with all those sauteed veggies. And then we're going to sprinkle, just to get a little bit stronger, a little bit of oregano, a little more of our, we don't need to take the lid off for this, a little more ancho chili powder, a little bit more paprika, and then a little bit more Mexican fiesta. And then a little garlic salt. And then I'm going to get a ladle and I'm going to ladle some of my juices over it, which will help kind of reduce down the liquidity of the juices and leave it kind of more thick on it. So it gives you more of that flavor. There we go. Do one more little ladle for now. And then we can always add some more as it kind of cooks. There we go. That way it will stay moist and tender, but really that flavor is really enhanced. I'm going to turn it down nice and low, and we'll let it kind of steam off, and then we'll add little by little some more liquid. Okay.
You have a question? Where did you learn to cook?
Just years of practice. I started cooking when I was 13 years old, and I just love cooking. I started cooking for my family, and I just haven't stopped. I took over when I was a kid. It was like one night a week, and then it was 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and I'm still cooking for my parents. And it's just a passion. I absolutely love it. So it's, I'm a much better cook now than I was several years ago, and it's just practice. Like everybody can make these meals. Like there's no secrets that I have hidden. It's just practice and learning things and trying again, even if you mess up and make a terrible meal or you burn something or overcook something, because we've all done it. And just keep trying. I feel like cooking is just a really valuable skill that I think is like a dying art, especially with how convenient food has gotten, like prepackaged, pre-made. But I think it's important. And there's also just that sense of like when you make something yourself and it turns out well, it just feels nice on there on it. It's something that I hope to be able to not only teach my kids and my family, but to be able to teach more people how to cook and learn things and realize that they can all do it themselves. I didn't go to a fancy school or anything like that. I'm self-taught, but it's self-taught, but just through practice. You get better over time. The first couple of times, cutting, you're slow, you're not very good, you don't understand what certain words mean, but you look something up and you figure it out. And trust me, I wasn't good. I've gotten stitches from cutting chicken back in high school, so trust me, I made plenty of mistakes on here. Okay, let's cut some of this. We're going to leave this for our salad. I'll leave those a little bit long. We'll set theirs, but this is going to go into our corn salsa. Because I realized I put red onions, but no sweet peppers in our corn salsa. Put a couple more minces on there. This corn salsa, if you've ever had like Chipotle's corn salsa, this is kind of modeled after it because I love their corn salsa. So we've got our red onions, sweet peppers. This is fire roasted. They typically just use a regular corn thing. And we're making our pico de gallo. So we have our Roma tomatoes diced up, some sweet peppers, our red onions, and then we're going to add some fresh cilantro here. Let's get our salad going so we can at least get our peppers out of the way. My kids I should say, not my kids. Some of my kids have been craving salads. Kind of like me. I feel like you get up through the holidays and you're like so done with rich foods. You're like, I want some nice salad. So Evie, she's my salad girl. She could have a salad every day, but she was like, can we have a salad with dinner too? And I'm like, sure. Even though I feel like the dips are all like practically a salad too. But let's get there. Let's get our cilantro going because we're going to need our cilantro for our rice and our pico and our corn salsa. Let's get our rice going. So I'm going to use a packet of sticky rice, and I'm going to make that cilantro rice, just like Chipotle's. But if you use the frozen sticky rice, it always just turns out really well. You need like a little bit of olive oil in here. Just so the rice doesn't stick to it. And then we're going to put it in there. I did steam it already in the microwave, but you can always do it straight up in the pan if you want to. You'll just need a lid for it. We're going to add in our rice, and we're just going to turn it on low. We'll add a little bit of garlic salt, fresh lime juice, and fresh cilantro, and we're just going to kind of cook it a little bit until like those flavors blend in. You don't need to do much to it. But it's kind of nice. So if you don't want to do a taco, you can make yourself kind of like a little bowl. Minus the refried beans here because Outside of my oldest daughter, we are not a bean family that much. I can do like a white bean in a soup. I don't mind that, but I'm just not a big refried bean girl. Let's add a little bit more of our nice kind of flavorful broth that we kind of stewed it in. Again, this was vegetable bouillon with some tomato paste and then our ancho chili powder, paprika, fiesta chicken seasoning, oregano, a little bit of liquid smoke to almost give you that smoky flavor, about a teaspoon of it.
You have a question? Do you ever use jasmine rice?
Yes, sometimes I'll use jasmine rice, especially if I'm going to do some like Asian cooking or whatnot, because it's a lovely, like has a slightly more aromatic form to it. I love also basmati rice, which is kind of a mix between basmati and jasmine rice. So I do have like a variety of it. I've recently found this frozen sticky rice, which just is really delicious. And I've been kind of loving that. Okay, let's get our fresh cilantro out here. Just trying to get the leaves of it. And there we go. We're going to mince this up because we're going to actually use, I'm probably going to end up using all of this because this is going to go in the corn salsa, the pico, and in the rice. And this is where you can't use the dried version. It just doesn't translate. So the dried version of cilantro is called coriander, and it does not have the same flavor profile at all. And so you really can't substitute it out. Like a lot of, spices, you can always substitute out the fresh and the dry, and it's not that noticeable. For this one, it is very noticeable. So let's give this a nice mince up. Here. And I leave I call it coriander, my cilantro fairly big. I don't mince it too small because I actually like some of the slightly larger leaves on there. And we're going to start by adding, a good handful to here. We'll do a good handful here. And we're going to do a good handful. We'll sprinkle it around our rice. And then we'll just go back and even it out with everything else that's kind of rough. So it's about a tablespoon in each one. But it's a very important. It adds just the right kind of flavor profile. Now we're going to use our limes. So for the rice, you're going to need a whole lime. And you're going to squeeze it over, and that's going to give you that cilantro, or not a whole lime, a whole half of a lime for that cilantro lime rice flavor on it. The other two, you can use a fourth of a lime, so to squeeze over it, but you need to add that in there. That's going to be the acidity in your salsa that's really going to bring those flavors together. Let me squeeze. Let's get this one going. This is a really juicy lime. Here we go. Okay, let me wash my hands for a second. Let's kind of toss our cilantro into our rice. And I have it on low, heating it up and cooking. I'm going to add a little bit of garlic salt too. But it should all come together nicely. And you can always add in a little bit of chicken broth or a little splash of water if you need to. But it should kind of fluff up on its own. I'm going to get my lid out so it can kind of steam cook with the natural moisture in it. Let me add a little sprinkle of garlic salt over first, though. There we go. And then we're just going to put our lid on and trap that moisture in so it kind of steams up that sticky rice. Let's give our shredded beef a nice little stir here. That's looking wonderful. And let's finish up. We've got to make our guacamole, and we'll mix our salads here, our pico and our salsas here. Last ingredient, each one is some garlic salt. So a little shake over. about a teaspoon in each one. And then before we mix those up, let's get our avocados going for our guacamole. Now my guacamole, I make a little bit different. It's kind of just a straight up avocado smash. Um, Keep it really simple. Avocados, fresh lime juice, and garlic salt. I don't add a lot of people will put in, peppers, onions, all that other stuff. I like to keep that simple. I make the pico. You can always mix that in on the side if you want to, but keep it simple. Just makes it so delicious. Okay, looks like we've got most of it. One part of my little one is probably the one that Jack helped me with. But for the most part, we can scoop these out and get them going in there for our mashing on there. If you have a little bruised part, just kind of scoop that little part out and then get the rest in there. Avocados are just, they're a very finicky fruit in the sense that they do not handle being loved by little children such as Jack at all. He always wants to help me. I'll leave them on the counter for them to ripe. And he walks by and he thinks they're a ball or something. And he'll have my avocados. And I'm like, no. And his favorite thing is to look at me and to throw it across the room. Because he knows he's not supposed to do that. Because Jack is a naughty, naughty boy. But the best way for avocados is you have to leave them to ripen out on the counter until they have just the right amount of smush where you give them like a little love, a little indent, and then you pop them in the fridge until you're ready to use them. Problem is if they get smushed or thrown or loved by a Jackie, then they can get a little bruised. Let's see. So almost all in there. So now we're going to add our lime juice. Squeeze. This one's not as juicy lime, so let me get my little helper out. And sometimes you get the juicy ones. This one was not as juicy of a lime, but I think that should do it. We'll mix in a little bit of garlic salt. Right there. And then I use a fork to mash up my avocado because it breaks it down but leaves it with a little bit of a texture. So it gets it to where you don't have any big chunks, but you're not super smooth. I don't want it to be whipped because I'm not a big fan of a whipped guacamole, but I don't want to have huge chunks in there. So using that fork really allows everything to kind of come together, but keeps it nice. Here we go. So I'll mash it all there. And then it's just about perfect. We've got that. Let's stir up our pico de gallo. Again, we have our fresh tomatoes in here, fresh cilantro, red onions, sweet peppers, fresh lime juice, and garlic salt for a nice, really mild salsa. Great for the chips and also putting on our little shredded beef tacos. Beautiful. And then our corn salsa, which is our fire roasted corn with red onions, sweet peppers, cilantro, garlic salt, and lime juice. And delicious. Let's finish up our salad. We'll shred some cheese and then we'll be ready.
Do you ever make homemade tortillas?
I do make homemade tortillas sometimes. I was thinking about making them tonight, but my parents are coming over and that was going to be a lot of tortillas to make. So I opted not to, but I do make homemade tortillas sometime for it. I have my own little tortilla press that kind of helps me get them out a little bit faster. But again, it takes a hot minute to make them. Let's get our cilantro lime rice here cooking up. Put that on there. Keep that lid steaming. Here's our shredded beef. I'm going to add just another little bit of our broth, kind of that juices that we cooked it in, over it. Because the nice thing, as we keep it over the slow heat, it evaporates kind of the water part out of it, but leaves all those flavors and spices into it, making it really flavorful. So it gives you that really pop of flavor on it. Let's finish up this salad here. And we can get ready to serve up here. Where's my little cucumber? Got a little cucumber. We'll slice this off. I'm just going to do kind of a garden salad. And get a couple little bits of cilantro in there. I thought about throwing some cilantro into the salad too, because I was like, ooh, that might be fresh. I once had this, it was just completely off topic, but I had this salad once that had fresh dill in it, and it was so good. And I just never thought to put fresh dill in a salad. And it was just a delicious salad. Okay, let me clean up some of my little scraps here. That way I know what I have to go in the salad and what are scraps on here. And then I've got cheese to shred. Now, we are very much a 90s taco family in the sense that we love cheddar cheese with our tacos. It's just what we love, and I know there's a million other cheeses you can do with tacos, but that is what our family loves. So I'm going to shred up some cheddar cheese here. But you can definitely use whatever cheese you want for it. Let me flip it over. That way when I'm shredding, I've got a nice cleaner side to it. Let me turn this down nice and low. We've got our cucumbers in here. Let's get our last. We've got some cherry tomatoes, which I had rinsed up from the other day when we made our big garden salad. So we had those all prepped up. Pop them in here. And then we have it in there. And then the other day I made this delicious balsamic ranch dressing, which we have a little bit. I made a big bottle of it, so we have that left over. That is going to be our dressing.
I have a question. Do you have a garden?
In the summer, I do have a garden where we have lots of herbs. I grow tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers. I have a fig tree, and then I have my apple trees have yet to yield, but I have apple trees and cherry trees. So I'm hoping to plant some pear trees, but I know they're going to take years. My old house had cherry or pear trees that gave us so many pears. But yes, plans this year to do a bigger garden. Now, I will say I have I dream of being a great gardener, but I lack one skill, which is watering. I am not very good at remembering to water my garden a lot. So they don't know if my garden doesn't always thrive as well as it should. Okay, let's put some there, and then I'm going to just sprinkle a little bit of our corn salsa over here. Kind of make it like a Southwest salad. We'll grate a little bit of cheese on it. And then we've got a nice kind of Southwest salad ready. And then we'll grate up our cheese, and then we'll be ready to build up our tacos and have some dinner. Okay. So one of those things where it's like last year in the middle of the year, I decided I was going to start grating my own cheese because there really is a big difference in between like shredded cheese and then doing it yourself with the anti-caking agent on it. And it's just a nicer, smoother cheese. Now, when you're putting it on a taco, it doesn't quite matter as much as if you're using it in like a mac and cheese or you're melting it. But I've gotten used to it now. It's a lot cheaper. So if you're looking to save money, grating your own cheese will save you a pretty penny. There we go. That should be enough for right now. Okay. Let me cut up some lime slices so we can squeeze them over our tacos as well. And let's get ready to build our dinner. Okay, give this a good stir. This is our cilantro lime rice. And here's our shredded beef. And let's me plate it up. Okay, let's get a plate here. And we can grab our little tacos. So I was going for a thing. I thought about making them, and then my parents, and I was like, oh, if my parents come over, that means I'm going to have to make 30 tacos on the thing. I'm like, that's going to take me forever. Or I could just use these. Okay, we're going to start with our tortillas. We are going to add our cilantro lime rice with fresh lime juice and fresh cilantro to the base of it. Just a little because you don't want to overfill them. Then we're going to add our shredded beef with onions and sweet peppers in here, seasoned with ancho chili pepper, paprika, oregano, tomato paste, a little bit of liquid smoke, and fiesta seasoning, so it has a nice kind of Mexican flair to it. We will sprinkle a little bit of our shredded cheddar cheese on here. And then we're going to give a little scoop of our corn salsa on each one. A little scoop of our pico de gallo on each one. And then, of course, definitely not least, a nice little scoop of our guacamole on each one. And then we'll finish it with a squeeze of our fresh lime juice. And then we can serve it up with our salad. And then, of course, we have our extra dips for our chips, corn salsa and everything. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. So our shredded beef tacos, and then we've got our corn salsa, our pico, and our guacamole. And you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a page or a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in there. I've got all of my hex clad pans, my knives, my cookware, everything I use in the kitchen in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.